So it was that story about him that really fascinated me, and it made me want to go out and buy a typewriter when I was at school, when I was about 15, 16 years old. Hello, my name is James Cook, and I'm 28 years old, and I'm a artist that's based in London. I basically make drawings from typewriters, which is a very unconventional and I suppose rarefied way of making drawings and portraits and landscapes. And I've been doing so for over a decade now. It's something that be basically started as a hobby and without any, I suppose, ambition or long-term plan has become a full-time job. 10 years later, so I started in 2014 and now it's 11 years, it's 2025 now. I didn't expect to be doing this for so long. Ever since I was a child, I wanted to be an architect. And that was all I had my ambition set on was designing buildings. Ever since I was a child, I loved to draw. I love drawing buildings. Such like a natural career to sort of gravitate towards was designing buildings. When I left school, I went to UCL, which is a London-based university, and studied architecture for 7 years and had worked in different offices. But during that time, in the background, I had typewriter art, which was a hobby of mine, and it was a project that I had started when I was at secondary school, and it came about as a school project. It wasn't a case of my art teacher at school saying to me, James, we want you to go and make drawings with typewriters. It was a research question where I was asked to go and look at artists that had used technology, whether old or new, in interesting ways. And just by chance, just by doing research, I'd come across typewriter art, which was this long forgotten way of, mark making that dates back to the Victorian times. And I just became completely fascinated by the history of typewriter art and some of the characters along this timeline, some from the turn of the 20th century, names like Paul Smith, who has a very interesting story. He was an American artist. Child, he was given a typewriter because his parents wanted him to learn to read and write. But Paul Smith suffered with cerebral palsy. So his parents gave him this typewriter, hoping that by pressing the buttons, the keys, he could learn to write in a much more easier way using the typewriter. But because he had this passion for art and he wanted to be able to communicate this somehow, he found that he could make drawings through typewriters despite having cerebral palsy. So it was that story about him that really fascinated me. It made me want to go out and buy a typewriter when I was at school, when I was about 15, 16 years old. And so, yeah, from when I left school, went to study architecture, 5, 6 years passed by, just graduating from university. Very slowly over those 5, 6 years, I've built a following up online on Instagram, for the most part posting anonymously because I didn't know what sort of reception it would get with people, whether they'd get it. You kind of have to get the idea and be slightly confused by what they're seeing in front of them because it's such an unconventional way of making drawings. It got picked up as a local news story because BBC Look East, which is a news channel in the UK, it basically flew from there. So it went from being this local news story to suddenly becoming a main news story. And I found myself just before the start of COVID so it was around February 2020, suddenly going on all of these television networks, whether it was Sky News, BBC News, doing American television. Everyone wanted to know about who's this guy that's making these drawings with typewriters because it was such an unusual thing. Over the last 5 or 6 years or 7 years back in 2020, I'd built up this collection of drawings, famous figures, portraits, celebrities, musicians that I sort of admired, architectural scenes, because again, because of my background was in architecture, I was really interested in drawing landscapes. Also really enjoyed taking typewriters outdoors and working on location. What's great about typewriter art is where sometimes conventional materials like pens and pencils can be quite limiting to what you can do with them, how many ways you can use them. Typewriters, there are so many different makes and models. It's just become amazing marketing tool to kind of spread what I do to the world. So the way that typewriters work is you have a ribbon and the ribbon has ink on it. And normally the have black ink. And so what happens is each key has a hammer. When you press the key, the hammer lifts up and it makes contact with the ribbon, and the ribbon transfers that ink onto the page. you can get ribbons in black ink, or they used to sell ribbons in lots of different colors. So orange, blue, yellow. More recently, I've actually managed to find some ribbons in different colors, and so I have started slowly introducing color into my work. So yeah, that's just one example. I do like to experiment with different perspectives as well, and there was one project I did a few years ago now, and I wanted to create a drawing. Well, I wanted to create a drawing where there's no correct way up, if that makes sense. So you could keep turning the frame and you could keep rotating it to any angle and it's still the correct way up. The way that I found that I could do that was by doing a fisheye perspective looking down. It's an anamorphic projection. It's such a wide angle that you start to see not just the ground but the sides, so you can see the scenery and you can see bits of the sky. And so because of this angle that I was able to use, I was doing these bird's eye view looking down drawings of landscapes where you could put them on like a spinning table and you could spin the drawing and there was no correct up or down, left or right. It's just amazing how art in itself can be quite divisive normally. Can sometimes be a bit boring. Some people are just not interested in art, but there's something about typewriter art. It casts such a wide interest. Even if you're not necessarily into art, there's something very fascinating about the process, where I think there is, and I think that's what people also feel when they watch the videos and they see this guy typing away and they hear the sounds of the typewriter, the ding of the bell, the clack clack noises of the keys, that kind of energy. And I think it excites people, and I think they enjoy watching those videos of drawings being produced.